Okay, so Barry, should we make a start? Could we ask everybody to mute themselves, or else we'll mute you, apart from Nick, at least to avoid any background noise. If everybody could mute themselves, that would be great for the moment.
Okay, so if you want to kick off, Ian, I'll be happy then to say a couple of words quickly about Nick, and then we're off.
Yeah, well, welcome to our penultimate ICC webinar before the summer break. We had a very successful conference recently on Cyprus, and we already have the venue for next year's conference. We'll say a little bit more about that at the end, but we'll get straight on to today's topic, an IA-related topic, but an IA-related topic with a difference, I think, given that Nik Peachey will be looking at its uses in teacher development, as opposed to purely course materials, for example, which we hear a lot about. Anyway, Barry?
Well, okay, very, very quickly. Thanks, Ian, and welcome, Nick, and welcome everybody. It's very good to see you all online. Basically, Nick and I have known each other for a number of years. We met first, Nick, when you were working at the British Council, and we used to meet on ITEPL conferences and things like that. And then, obviously, when you went freelance, you joined you started peacheypublications.com, which is the center for so much ideas which are being presented to teachers every week. And actually, I can't wait every Friday for Free Friday, when Nick publishes free advice for teachers and that they can use in their classes and all their work. He's the winner of a couple of Elton Awards. Eltons are the ELT equivalent of Oscars, but was not Los Angeles, it's London. And basically he's won awards for innovation in teacher resources and also in course innovation material. And obviously will continue doing so as AI develops. And then just to say very quickly that it's really important what he's talking about right now, because we're all at one level or another having to be aware of AI and how it's working in teaching and in teacher training and in materials operations. So with that, I can't wait to see what you have to say, Nick, and look forward to hearing from you.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me along as well. Yeah, as Barry said, this session is going to be on prompting for AI-mediated autonomous development. That sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but hopefully it will become clearer what that's about soon. Just before we get started, this webinar, yeah, it's going to spotlight kind of collaborative prompting and the use of it in autonomous teacher development. The ideas come from this book, which is one of the books that I've written recently. I also have other books for lesson materials writers and for teachers who want to use various aspects of AI in their teaching. So that's my sales push for now. I'll also be sharing a link to this webinar with you towards the end. So you'll be able to access it again afterwards, and you can pick up links to my social media or any of the books, and you'll be able to copy paste the prompts from it if you like, although I have tried to put them onto a separate sheet, which I should have remembered a bit about. Actually, should have opened that first, but you should be able to pick up the prompts from a Google Doc at the end as well. So don't worry too much about trying to copy down prompts and things like that. Watch, hopefully enjoy, and I'll get a move on with it. That's enough for that from me. Okay, so this session, I'll just do a quick introduction to AI chatbots. Probably you know, but most of you will have tried using one at some point or other. I'll have a look at AI mentoring for CPD and why collaborative prompting and why I think this is important. We'll look at 4 examples that you can use either yourself or with your trainee teachers. And that's something that I'd really be interested in your feedback on, whether you do think they could be used with trainee teachers. Then I'll look at a little bit at how to design these collaborative prompts, because you can, design them yourselves, and it's not too difficult. Actually, people seem to think that sort of prompting AI really well is complex, but I sort of think compared to giving students clear instructions, prompting AI is actually quite easy. You know, if you think of it like that and think of it, this is a bunch of students and I want to tell them what to do, and you write your instructions in the same way, then it is quite easy. And I'll have a look at a little bit at keeping up to date, and then we can discuss some takeaways. Okay, so all the prompts and the ideas from this session come from the Manual of AI-Mediated Autonomous Teacher Development, which is the book that I've written and published. Okay, just a bit of background about AI and chatbots. You know, most people think that there's something quite new, and this has come out of nowhere in 2022 with OpenAI. And it's actually not as new as we might think. Actually, the first AI chatbot was used in the 1960s, late 1960s, I think 67, 69, around that time. It was called Elvira, and it was used as a tool for delivering psychotherapy. So people in the US at a university decided that it was really helpful for people to have someone to talk to about their problems, and yet most people couldn't afford that. And so they developed a chatbot that would kind of echo questions and get people thinking through their problems. And it was very successful, and a lot of people believed that that worked, that it was a real person. My own first interaction with AI was in about 2001, 2002. I was teaching for the British Council in Morocco at the time, and I had a group of teenage students who were about 12, 13, 14, who had a good level of English, but were very reluctant to speak to each other in English. And I really wanted them to practice. Being quite naive at the time, remember this was over 20 years ago, I went to a chat room to see if that would be a suitable place to take them, and very quickly realized that it wasn't a suitable place to take them, but not just because of the dangers involved, but because actually I found when I got there, I wasn't having any very good conversations. You know, most of the conversations you saw in chat rooms around that time were, hey, what's up, dude? How you doing? Are you male or female? That kind of thing. Where are you? And that was about it. So I decided that wasn't a great idea. But luckily, at the time, a film had just been released by Steven Spielberg called AI, Artificial Intelligence. Really interesting film, deals with lots of the kind of ethical issues we're about to start confronting now, and just a great film to watch. It was based on the story of Pinocchio, but in the film, the character of Pinocchio is played by an android boy, and he wants his mother to love him. He's determined to be like a real boy and be loved by his mother, which makes it very interesting. Anyway, the good part about that film for me as a teacher was that at the time they had a website to promote the film, and on the website there was an AI bot, and all it was a simple field where you could type in questions and interact with the character from the film. So I tried this out, was quite impressed, and got my students to do it. And they went to the computer room, because we used to have computer rooms in those days instead of phones. And they each had their computer, and they started interviewing the chatbot. And I found that they really enjoyed it. It answered all of their questions. I found that they were asking questions that they wouldn't ask a real person or a person that they knew. They were asking questions about love and about emotions, and they were constantly getting answers, and this was really impressive. The problem with it was that, you know, it had quite a short attention span, and so if you asked it a question, it was like what's called now is reactive AI. So it would react to a question and answer it. But then if you asked a follow-up question, it had forgotten what it answered the last time. And so you couldn't build up those longer conversations. And that's kind of what really amazed me about ChatGPT the first time I tried it, was that you could talk to it like a real person, and you didn't have to kind of clearly reference things or start a new question every time. And I found that was really impressive. I think at the time, I'm not sure what it is now, but at the time I was told that ChatGPT could reference back up to 4,000 words in your conversation. So, and my wife tells me that's far more than I can, and she's probably right. But then she has that amazing ability to remember what I said 10 years ago, so she has that kind of memory, and she can remember what I said 10 years ago, where we were when I said it, what she was wearing, and all of those kinds of things. It's terrible, terrible thing to have to live with. Anyway, so these were some of the great things about it. It would answer questions. It never got tired or bored or impatient. It had no ego or self-consciousness, so it would answer questions honestly, but it had this short attention span. Whereas now, modern generative AI can follow very long conversational threads. They can instigate response, and they can be programmed or used to power other apps. And in a way, what we're going to look at with collaborative prompting is a kind of programming. You program it to be your mentor in some way. So let's have a look at some AI-mentored CPD. First, I'll look at some of the whys of collaborative prompting. I'm not sure how much sense this will make, but when you see the examples, maybe keep this in mind and see if you agree. I think it's much more engaging. Like the kind of prompting most people are doing is just asking it to do something for them, and it delivers something for them. And I don't find that's very engaging. It's not, it's kind of, outsourcing your kind of metacognitive skills, and I don't think that's a good idea. Collaborative prompting is great for thinking through thought processes and great for using mental frameworks as well. It can help develop your metacognition and your understanding of those processes too. It's developmental rather than, I think a lot of AI prompting is retrograde. It slows down learning, which I think is a good thing and something that we need to do a lot of the time, especially for languages. Quick learning is stuff that you generally quickly forget. Anyone who crams for exams knows that. And it can help teachers who are working independently overcome isolation. So for me, I believe it's both effective and affective, although I can never remember what either one is because that's my dyslexic curse. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some prompts and hopefully prove some of that. This was the first interactive prompt that I found, actually. I've actually edited it now and made it much more concise. And it was a prompt that I found for making ChatGPT into a Socratic partner. And the first time I tried it, I thought this is amazing. I was really amazed by that. And it programs ChatGPT to take a Socratic approach. For anybody who's not sure what the Socratic mentoring is, there's a quick summary of it here in bullet points generated by ChatGPT for me. I got rid of some of them because it got some of them wrong, but these are pretty much the right ones. It's a core method. And I won't read that to you, but you can come back and have a read of it later. So basically, Socratic mentoring is about asking questions to develop the person you're questioning. So as a good Socratic mentor, you should be asking your students lots of questions as a way to guide their thinking. Okay, and this is, basically this is the prompt that I've written for it. And it's a very simple prompt. And I'll show you how it works. I'll just copy paste it. Oh, sorry, I've forgotten I have to do a magic trick here to get that to copy paste. I'll go to ChatGPT and I'll type that in for you. Hopefully this is going to be big enough for you to see. Make it a bit bigger. So I'm copy pasting in my Socratic prompt. So I'm just asking it to act as a Socratic mentor. By starting with act as, I'm telling it making clear the field of knowledge. Use Socratic approach to help me develop my knowledge by asking me questions to help me explore the topic. After each question, wait for my reply before asking the next question. It's important to put that in your little program. And when I've finished exploring the topic, summarize our discussion and make suggestions for areas of related knowledge that I could develop further. Okay, so I'm going to put it in I haven't told it what I want to find out about yet, but it says, I'll be glad to act as your Socratic mentor. To begin with, please tell me what topic you'd like to explore together. So I can choose any topic now. I'll choose inclusion in English language education. This was one of the first things I researched with it as well. So inclusion in English language education. Okay, and it should start by asking me questions. Okay, so it says, we could have audio on for this as well if I wanted to, and I could be speaking with it. A meaningful and important topic. Let's start with a broad question. What does inclusion mean to you in the context of English language education? So there's my well-rehearsed answer. That's a strong starting point. What do you think might prevent some students from participating equitably in an English language lesson? So my suggestions could be neurodiversity, range of neurodiversity. Let's put that in. How might neurodiversity affect your learner's experience of ability to engage in typical? Okay, so we can carry on this way and it will keep asking me questions to draw on my knowledge. If I get stuck, and it will keep going deeper if we continue long enough. If I get stuck, I could just say, I'm not sure. Can you help me with that? Okay, so it's given me an example, of course, and thank you for your honesty. Let me guide you through it with another question. If a student had ADHD or was an autism spectrum, what kinds of classroom activities, methods might they find challenging and why? Okay, so it's pushing me and it's pushing my knowledge, and if I get stuck, it will help me and guide me to different areas. But that's way of sort of building the conversation and interacting with the chatbot to find out more and explore your own and develop your own knowledge. And as I said, I could go on for this for quite a while. I could leave it in my history, come back to it weeks later if I wanted to, or days later, or an hour later. It doesn't matter which. And we can continue this interaction between the two of us. And as I develop my knowledge, I could go away and look up something, or I could ask it, I could say, so if I get stuck, it can search the web for me and provide some sources to different places. Okay, and then I've got links there. Okay. So that's my first way of prompting, but I find that a really useful thing for doing my own research and digging into things, finding out what I know and where the gaps are in my knowledge, because we always know what we know, but we never know. It's what we don't know that what we don't know that we don't know that kills us, isn't it? We often know what we know and we know what we don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah. So that's my first developmental prompt. So the next one, I once I'd got that one and worked out how to write the prompt, I thought, how else can I use this? And the obvious thing for me was that I thought about guided reflection. Now, how many people here think that it's a really good idea to keep a teacher's journal? Where you reflect at the end of each lesson and you write down your reflections. Most of us probably would say yes. Yeah, great idea. How many of us actually do it? Yeah, not so many. I know I always sort of recommend it to loads and loads and loads of people. Whenever I've done teacher training, I've said, yeah, you should really keep your teacher journal. But, when it comes to me actually doing it myself, I often I get halfway through it or I do a few entries, then I start to forget and things like that. And sometimes I feel a bit like, yeah, well, what's the point of doing this, but this is this is a prompt that can help you do that, and you can choose a kind of a reflective cycle to do. This example uses Gibbs' reflective cycle, which is, I think, is a really good one, because it takes you through the stages of reflecting, but it also helps you put together an action plan at the end of your reflection. So it's not just about reflecting on the lesson, but really helps you do something about it, which I think is great. And the prompt that I use for that, again, I've written this one. You can actually put in any framework you want. It gives you a space where you can put on a framework. So if you have a different one, which is, I don't know, what, so what, and what then, or what next, or whatever those other ones are, you can try that. But I'll just copy paste that and show you how it works. And what this will do is it will actually walk me through the process of reflecting. So I'm going to put that on and say, Gibbs reflective cycle, was it? Cycle. It probably doesn't matter if I get it wrong. It'll guide me through the process, and it will step me through the different parts of that process. Okay, so there it is. Gibbs reflective cycle. It tells me the model has 6 stages. Let's start with the first stage, description. Can you describe a recent teaching experience you'd like to reflect on? Please include what happened, when it happened, and who was involved. So if I make something up, I could say, okay, so that's my bad experience that I'm putting in there. One of my students left the room crying during a listening lesson. Again, obviously, the more information you give it and the more articulate you are, the better it's going to give you in terms of response. And it says, thanks you for sharing that. Sounds like a significant moment. Let's move to the second stage, feelings. What were you thinking and feeling at the time she got up, left? How did you feel immediately after the lesson? Looking back now. So it could be really superficial and say, I feel really bad and confused. Thank you for honesty. It's a natural response, evaluation, and then it takes me through. So I won't go through all 6 steps, but as you can see, it's taking me through this process. It's making me think about things. It's giving me questions to answer. And as I work through it, as I work through this, I'll find out, I'll share more and develop more about my experience. And at the end of it, it will help me to put together an action plan. And so, once I have that action plan, I know what to do about it. So it's not just the reflective process, which is very important, but actually helping you think through something to do about it. And I can hear some weird talking in the background. Somebody not on mute. Okay, could you mute, please? Okay. So that's collaborative prompting. Okay. Okay, so I don't know what you think about that, but that for me, that makes the process more relevant, more realistic, and more productive. At the end of it, you actually you have an action plan, and that's more likely, I think, to motivate less experienced teachers to actually use the process and work through the process. One of the other, things that I always recommend teachers do, again, and which I haven't taught for a while, but I have to say that I kind of often miss doing was classroom research or action research in the classroom. And again, that can be quite a difficult thing to organize and plan yourself. But again, you can use ChatGPT or any AI as a mentor to help you guide you through this process. And again, this is a prompt that can help you do that. Again, it's written It starts with act as. I always start the prompts with act as, because that's something that helps the AI limit the field of knowledge that it draws from. So act as a classroom action research expert on classroom research. Help me create an action research project on my specific teaching situation. Please walk me through the process, small steps. Do this by asking me questions. Only ask me one question at a time. When you have enough information, please summarize the project for me. So again, I can copy paste that one. I'll give you a quick demo of how that works, just to prove that it does. Again, copy paste it in there. And it will start asking me questions. So let's get started with your action research project. Here's the first question. Okay, and by walking me through these different questions, it helps to develop, my metacognitive processes of understanding how you do action research. If, for example, you have trainees who haven't really been used to doing this, it's their first time, it can help them walk them through the process. So what is one specific challenge or problem you've noticed in your classroom that you'd like to improve or better understand with research? Okay, so there's something I want to research. I want to use more AI with my students. Excellent. This gives us a focus. Let's narrow it down a bit further. Okay. What kind of impact or improvement are you hoping for? So it's getting me, so already it's sort of improving the average thing that teachers sort of say, oh, I want to use some more AI with my students, but then they don't really think about why or what impact that wants. So, okay, so what I want it to do is improve their speaking. Okay, can you tell me more about your students? So, okay, it's getting me to think about my students and their needs. That's an ideal class. Okay, and it will we'll keep working through this process together. It will keep asking me questions until it has enough information. And then at the end of that, it will help me put together, it will make some suggestions for my action research project. So what kind of activities do you currently do with them? How well do these work? Okay, it's interacting with me about it. What kind of AI tools? See, now it gets to the difficult part. I've got to make some decisions. And as you see, it continues and it steps me through this process, makes me think out the process properly and plan properly. And then at the end of that, we can come up with our action research project. Okay, so is that 4? I think that's 4. Oh yeah, the last one, again, the fourth one is smart plans and smart goals. And again, this is something that, constantly recommend people to do. It's great to set goals if you're a teacher and you want to develop your teaching, have clear goals, make them smart. This is something that when you worked at the British Council, we all had to have smart plans that had smart goals in them. So if you plan it, if you have a goal, you make sure that it's very specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant. And for me, the most important one is that it's time bound. It's not like, I want to be a better teacher or I want to be better at listening. You actually make it very specific. You want to do this and improve in this way by this time, so that you set a deadline for yourself about when you want things done. So smart plans, I think, can be really, really, really useful. And again, they're the sort of thing that I think we should do, but they can be a real drag to write. But again, I created this little prompt, which should help you create a smart plan. And again, it just programs the AI to sort of walk you through the processes involved. And of course, by doing this repeatedly with the AI, you develop your understanding of how to do it and you get better at doing it yourself. So it gives you a bit of information about SMART goals. And it says, let's begin with the first step. What specific aspect of your teaching would you like to develop or improve? And it gives me some suggestions. So I'll say use of technology. Okay, excellent. Focusing on use of technology is a great area to develop. Can you be more specific? So it's pushing me to be more specific. I want to use an AI speaking tool. And what's the specific objective? So it's still sticking on this S. It wants me to be really articulate with this. Increase speaking time, provide individualized speaking, help with fluency. Okay. Perfect. How will you measure this? So now it's kind of pushing me to do the difficult stuff. Okay, I won't go into the difficult stuff because I know we're limited for time, but at the end of this, it will ask me enough questions, and at the end of this, it will help me formulate my SMART plan and will help me develop materials to sort of reach it and make suggestions for that. So, I think for me, that's a much better way of doing it than sitting down and just writing through it on my own. And especially if I'm working autonomously, as many of us do, and I don't really have someone who kind of makes me, what's the word? Who makes me answerable to completing that goals. At least having this will help me kind of, I can put a date into my calendar when I've finished, and I can put it in my calendar and make myself kind of answerable to myself, if you like. And then I can come back here and share results with it if I save this in my library. So I think, that's another example of a way that you can use these kind of collaborative prompts to sort of help you develop and think through those processes. If I just hop back to my previous slide, so that's, personally, I think this is more engaging. It's helping me develop the thought processes and understanding the frameworks. It's developing my metacognition. It's developing my teaching. Okay, it's much slower than just saying to ChatGPT, hey, I want to do some action research, print something out for me. But by slowing it down, I'm learning more from it. And again, I'm overcoming isolation because I have, someone to talk to about this. It's not just me talking to myself. Okay, so I don't know if you agree with me on that, but that's my view. In terms of writing these yourself, if you see a few, you'll realize that they're quite a fixed structure, and this is the kind of structure I use. As I said, I always start with this bit that's act as, because that tells you the AI what field of expertise you want to draw from. If you just say produce a lesson plan for me, or produce an action plan for me, it isn't field specific. But if you tell it to act as a teacher trainer who specializes in ESL, for example, then you're limiting down the field of language, the field of knowledge that it draws on. Guide me through the process. So tell it what process you want to take. Ask me guiding questions. Tell it how you want it to help. And this bit's important. Wait for my answer before asking the next question, because if you don't put that bit in, it will just do this kind of stream of consciousness to you. And then you can give it some rules. Follow these rules while we interact. You can specify whether you want it to be formal or informal. You could tell it what level of the Common European Framework of reference you want to use if you're perhaps using this with students. You could tell it whether you what level you're at. You could specify that I want it to be at PhD level, or I want it to be at master's level, or I want it to talk to me like I'm a 15-year-old, whatever that is. You could even tell it what accent or what you want it to be, if you like. So, give it a whole bunch of rules to follow and then put it in and see if it works for you. But you can do that, any kind of thinking process that you want it to walk through, that should work. Okay. So that's it. A few tips on keeping up to date. If you want to keep up to date with this stuff and you think you're struggling, I provide a monthly newsletter. Oh, I've clicked the wrong button, sorry. So I provide a monthly newsletter, which is free. And so if you want to scan that, or you can get the link later, it's Nik Peachey's EdTech and ELT newsletter. And what I post in that is once a month, I post a collection of about 5 or 6 AI tools or educational technology tools that I've discovered, and 5 or 6 articles to read. So if you want to sign up for that, it's free, you can. If you want more than that, I have this website called Tools for Teachers and Learners. Originally, I started it when I was an MA teacher at Westminster University about 15 years ago, and I started curating tools for educational technology. Now there are about 2,000 on there, but if you want to go and have a search through them, give that a try. QR code is there if you want to investigate further, or wait till you get the presentation at the end. And then if you're more interested in theory and background, I also curate articles about educational technology and learning, which I put on a website called Learning and Technology News. So check those out. Also, there are my books. I have 5 books. If you want to check them out, by all means do. I also run courses on all of these 5 subjects. So if you don't like books and you want to do a course instead, get in touch and I can put you onto a course for them. And lastly, any questions? I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. Sorry, I haven't really been following the chat that carefully. So if any have gone in and I've missed them, by all means, feel free to put them in again. I'll also put a link to the presentation in.
Okay, I can't see any questions yet on the chat. I'm sure it'll come through very, very quickly. I've got one I could ask you if it would be any help.
Sure, always.
Okay, well, this is a colleague of ours who was looking for information using techniques, and he got some feedback online, which wasn't just instructions, but actually was text that he could use, and found that a lot of it was actually wrong. Now, if I'm getting stuff out of artificial intelligence and it is factually wrong in some cases, why should I have any confidence in that system at all?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think, the question I'd want to know to answer that would be, how did he ask? And, which AI did he ask? And you have to look for where the problem is. Often these problems, I'm not saying it is, but with computers, there are what we call picnic problems. And picnic is an acronym for problem in chair, not in computer. So that could be the problem is in the chair. You haven't asked it the right way. You haven't asked the right questions. So that's one option. There is also the option that I don't know how many mistakes were in it or what he was asking about. But yes, there are, these things do make mistakes. But in a way, I think that's a good thing in terms of our students, because we should be aware of that. And we should be aware of the fact that you need to check anything you find, because wherever you look on the internet, whether you look on Google, whether you look in a published book, whether you look in the newspaper, you can find things that are not true and are not correct, and in terms of, this thing about, AI destroying people's critical thinking, I think it's the opposite. We need to be more critical thinkers, not just of AI, but of everything we read, everything we see, everything we hear, and start to question a lot more. And I think that that's very important. And I think, the other thing, I guess, is, okay, AI makes mistakes, but so do teachers. Have you ever come out of the class having answered a question and got home and thought, shit, I gave them a wrong answer. That wasn't right. I've had arguments with people about things that I've later realized that I got wrong. These things happen. But I think the important thing is that, we cross-check all information. Don't just go to ChatGPT, put something in and get some answer and give it to people and assume that it's correct. That's not the way. And we should make our students aware of that, and we should teach them how to check facts. Fact checking, I think, is one of the most important skills that we can help our students with at the moment.
Okay, very, very well done. Thank you so much for that one. We've got a few questions online now.
Yeah, there's one about paid versions. I'm using a paid version of ChatGPT at the moment with those prompts, but only because I don't want to sort of get into a training situation like this and get halfway through and have a message come up saying, you've used all your credits, come back in an hour's time. That isn't very good for my nerves. So I want to be sure that things work. But all of the prompts that are in the book and all of the ones that I've showed you will work the same. They will work on the free version of ChatGPT. They'll work on DeepSeek. I think they work on Gemini as well. But try them. I think they'll probably work on most kind of decent AI chatbots. And it doesn't have to be a paid one. They're quite simple programs. So,
okay, yeah.
In some cases, this thing about going deeper, there are some platforms that are better for research and have kind of are more research orientated. So they pull on sources and give you the sources where they've drawn the information from.
Okay. A lot of our colleagues online are university teachers. And one of the issues, because I'm doing the same at the moment, funnily enough, I didn't know this, but actually I left Westminster in 2010, obviously just before you joined. But more important, what's happening is if I'm looking at essays for MBA programs or MSc programs, I'm finding that if the essays are right, they're often very different from the way my students talk. And I'm worried that they're getting their stuff online, and that if they're getting all their stuff online and putting it into their essays from AI, there's a risk they may be picked up by Turnitin as being fraudulent. What's your response on that?
Yeah, I guess there are a lot of issues around that. I mean, for one thing, there's a lot of platforms that say that they can detect AI. And so people are turning to these to check their students' work. And what I say is that they're not very efficient at that. I mean, I think ChatGPT Zero was one of the most prominent ones, and it boasted something like a 40% accuracy rate. And a 40% accuracy rate means that you have a 60% fail rate, which I think is a terrible statistic. So, I think, things like Turnitin are boasting that they can do this. This is kind of quite dangerous. They're particularly for non-native speakers, because it tends to. I heard some research that it picked up false errors from people who were non-native speakers. My wife, actually, who works in education, was doing a course, and she got picked up as having used AI to generate something in her assignment, which she hadn't done. She's scrupulously honest, and so there is a danger of using these things. But cheating like that, there is a risk that comes with cheating like that kind of cheating, and it's something that we want to do something about. But I think part of the problem is that we need to address the way students are assessed and think about how we can change that. And think about how informing students about how to use AI in a constructive way and how to cite its use. I can see Francis has his hand up and has been waiting a while. Should I go to Francis?
Why not?
Francis,
Let's do that, and then we're going to read on majoring. Yep. Okay.
Barry, I just read an article on using AI in the humanities, especially in philosophy, and one of the conclusion was that the people now are resorting more to oral examination or oral interaction to
Yeah.
so they are going away from the the product, which is like the essay.
Yeah.
And so, but which is interesting, just to even if you have a product, which is the writing essay, you can also include the process by having the student go through the type of questions you ask, whether they are
Yeah.
exploring an issue, but they will have to also to give the prompt, the prompt they gave and the raw answer they receive, and then see what they did with that. So that's also
Yeah.
interesting. It opens a lot of door for critical thinking and exploring your thought process.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the way people are developing processes for, really constructive, intelligent processes for the way that they interact with AI, especially when they're doing research and preparing writing. And the written, like you say, the written product is becoming far less important, and understanding the process of how to produce something good with it is becoming far more important, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Rita Majory is also teaching university in Germany. Rita, do you want to ask a question, or do you want me just to read it out?
Barry, you can read it out. That's fine with me.
No, you're online, so have a say it personally.
Okay. Yeah, my question was, how can we use ChatGPT and his friends to teach? I mean, to teach curiosity and critical thinking, these probably human unique selling points.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that we can do with ChatGPT to get students thinking more critically. Actually, I shared a prompt on Sunday. I have a newsletter that I put out on Sunday called Sunday Suggestions, and I put a critical thinking prompt in, and it's quite a nice one because it makes ChatGPT become your critical thinking friend. And what you do is that you can then give it an opinion, and it will argue with you against that opinion, and it will use well-structured logical thinking to do that, so that you can actually use it to argue with it and to exchange opinions with it, and to sort of develop your critical thinking in that way. It's also really useful for getting it to come up with examples of different fallacies and fallacial arguments, which are always kind of quite difficult to get examples of. We often talk about different fallacies in critical thinking, but it's really hard to find nice examples for students to kind of dig into and try and uncover. And so it can produce some nice ones for you, and you can get students trying to uncover where's the fallacy in the thinking, or what kind of fallacy is it. So there are loads and loads of different ways that we can use it to develop critical thinking. Probably it's worth going to ChatGPT yourself and saying, hey, how can I use you to develop my students' critical thinking? And it will give you some suggestions.
Okay.
Well, on this issue of going back to this issue of cheating, I actually went to ChatGPT and I said, can you give me 10 suggestions for how to stop students using AI for cheating? And it came up with 10 really good suggestions, and which are very kind of valid answers. And so, if that's worrying you, then go and ask it, see what they think.
All right. Thanks, Nik.
Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left. There's a stream of questions started by Kosik on that thing about how do we adapt AI language work to the CEFR levels, particularly if people are at B1 or even lower.
You can ask it to adapt things to different levels, and tell it what level you want it to produce materials at. When you do it, don't just put CEFR though, write it out in full. Put Common European Framework of Reference, because that reduces the potential for confusion of the acronym with some other kind of acronym. Like there could be the Cambridge English French Relationships Club or something like that, that could be CFR as well. So, you want to make it as clear as you can. You want to adapt a text from A1 of the Common European Framework of Reference in English to level C2, or the other way around, and it will do that for you. I mean, there are other platforms, language specialist platforms that do that, like Teachermatic or Magic School. I think all of them have a kind of programmed generator which will adapt to different levels for you, and that's quite useful. Quite a useful thing to have, or you can put in a text and it will tell you what level it is as well. You know, there are different ones about.
Okay.
Lots of them.
Mary Marin made a very good point about if you add EFL, so they're very clear what language it's all about, they find it a bit easier to work at the particular level you're specifying.
And even easier if you put English as a foreign language or English as a second language. Again, any acronyms you put in can be misunderstood. You know,
right.
it can't read your mind. Write it out full form. Yeah.
Okay. Final question on the system. Fajaruddin Akbar was talking a little bit about how he's reacting with ChatGPT. Fajaruddin, would you like to ask a question?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Barry. And hi, Nick. Nice to
Hi.
do your session as always. So yeah, about information. So yeah, I said that I wouldn't use, and I try my best not to use ChatGPT and other chatbots for information. As you know, they mostly summarize information. They do search now, right? They search from news. They take sources from the internet, but they summarize things and sometimes mixed up between information. So I wouldn't trust chatbots for information. However, they're very great at manipulating things like modifying text, adapting text, creating text. But I would like to ask one question. Well, probably your suggestion for those who are still reluctant in trying chatbots. To what I see and what I've witnessed, most are very stiff when it comes to using ChatGPT because they thought that they think that they need to use exact prompt or very specific prompt, while actually we can just use ChatGPT like chatting. So what do you think about it? So should we just see these chatbots as for chatting instead of very strict into creating complex prompts? What do you suggest?
Yeah, there's a form of prompting that in the coding world called vibe prompting, and vibe prompting is basically just having a chat with it about what you want to know, you know, and chatting with it in the way that you would a person. And it's exactly what you say. A lot of people think of it as like Google on steroids or something like that. So they think that they can put in a keyword and it will give every bit of information they want. And it's not like that. It's more like, you know, I think of it as it's more like my uncle. You know, I used to have this uncle who always thought he knew everything about everything. You know, he always had an opinion. Didn't matter what it was. You could ask him about anything. He'd tell you whether he knew anything or not. If he didn't know it, he'd make it up. And, you know, ChatGPT is a bit like that. It will all, you know, it's very customer service orientated. If you ask it a question, it will give you an answer. Can't guarantee it's a right answer. It will tell you whatever you want to hear in a lot of cases. So I think, you know, chatting with it is really nice if you have this longer form chat. And, you know, I think that works well as well, you know, works well for a lot of people.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm afraid we do have to end the question session there, but thank you very, very much for your questions, and thank you very much for the time you've taken to give the answers. That's really great. Let's now return the stage to Ian to close down the session. Ian, over to you.
Yeah,
I'll put a link to the presentation in chat. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nick. Fabulous as always. Can I just ask you to stop sharing your thing, and then I can hopefully
there you
go. Pull up. So I'm going to now share with you some information about the ICC, if I can find it. Just 1 second. We had over 120 people in the today in the presentation, so that was fantastic. Let me see.
Yep.
Can you see the presentation?
I can.
Barry, can we see?
Yeah, can see it, no problem. Yep.
Okay. Good. So just going to go through a few bits of ICC information. My name's Ian McMaster. I'm one of the board members of the ICC, along with co-host Barry Tomalin, and we have a number of other board members here. As you can see, the mission of the ICC, promoting quality in language education, and you should be seeing now the slide from Nik's fabulous talk today. We have one more webinar coming up before the summer break. And can you see that one? You should be able to see that one now. Yeah, so the next one coming up is Jeff Tranter, who will be looking at the provocative topic of book or no book. But Jeff is an extremely experienced teacher and teacher trainer who's been associated with the ICC for many, many years. So that will be fabulous. I should just say one other thing about today's presentation. We have been recording it. We will put the recording in the ICC website in the member area, and later make it available on our YouTube channel after a while. And certificates of attendance will be sent to anybody who is an ICC member. It's an ICC member benefit. So let's just look at a couple of other things about the ICC. We have a journal. Barry, do you want to say something there?
Very simply, we have the one which is celebrating and summarizing the last conference in Larnaca, and we'll have that out in the next 10 days. Okay, and I'll be sending that to all the people who subscribe. And the other thing to say, by the way, this is a practical journal for people who are teaching, i.e. like us. And if you have got something that you would like to suggest and write about, I would be delighted to have a look at it and publish it.
Great. And another very important part of the ICC's work is the Uralta Certificate in Language Teaching to Adults, which has been being redeveloped. And Helen Bullock is here, and Helen's going to say a few words about that. Helen?
Yes, thank you very much, Ian, and welcome to everyone who's there. I'm sorry I'm so late, but like many other teachers, I'm still teaching and will be until about 9 o'clock. Uralta has been in existence for about 25 years, and many of us decided that it was time for an update. And we've kept a lot of the normal, usual subject areas of language awareness, learning processes, language teaching, but we now have added more autonomous learning and a whole new section on artificial intelligence and digital technology within language teaching, which I think for many, particularly new teachers and probably some older teachers, will be very, very useful. You can find all the information on the ICC website, or you could go to one of the ICC centers. There are many around Europe. And we've updated, as well as the program itself, we've updated the certification process. So there's much more autonomy. People can choose more subjects to write about and put in their dossiers. So I look forward to many people signing up for it. It is a worthwhile program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Helen. And here on this slide, you should now be able to see a little bit about ICC membership. An international organization, very, very important, and also going across different languages. I suggest that if you're interested, that you go to our website to find more details. You can see the link there to the website. You'll find out more about us. And I would encourage anybody who is not a member already to become a member of the ICC, which has a whole range of benefits. So check that out on our website. We'd love to see more of you join us as members. And as I mentioned earlier, we had a very successful conference in May in Larnaca, Cyprus, which I think everybody who was there will agree it was extremely stimulating conference. And we do know when and where our next year's conference is going to be. And you can see it here on this slide here, I hope. The 2026 annual conference will be in May, the 8th to the 10th of May in Zurich. Now that's just at the moment, that's just to save the date so that you know when the date is. Obviously, there'll be more information coming with call for proposals and other deadlines for registering and all that kind of thing. But it's the same time that we had this year's one at the beginning of May, 8th to 10th of May in Zurich. So you might like to make a note of that. And as I say, do join us and become a member. We'd love to hear more from you. And thank you, everybody, for your very active participation today. As I said, we had over 120 people here. We have to thank Nik again. Always a pleasure to listen to Nik and his very practical approach to using technology, different forms of technology. And we'll wish you all a good rest of the day, whatever part of the world you're in. Barry?
Yep, absolutely endorse everything you've said, Ian. Lovely to be with you. Lovely to see some old friends as well. And do get in touch if you're interested in letting your ideas be publicized more in our next ICC journal. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to close down now. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Nik.
you.
Thank you again, Nick.
All the best. Thank you.